Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Bat Around. I'm your host, Paul Valley. He's Ryan Blake, and he looks frozen. And he is Luke Jackson, the editor of PressBox and Baseball Aficionado. Good morning, gentlemen. How are we doing today?
I think I'm doing a little better than Ryan Blake, who is frozen in time.
Yeah, it looks like Ryan is definitely frozen. Hopefully, he can get that worked out. But in the meantime, Luke, thank you so much for joining us. We always like to have you on throughout the year, usually beginning of the season, all-star break, towards the postseason, and sprinkle you in every now and again during the regular season. So thank you so much for being with us today, man.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We always like to get you in here because your takes on baseball and the Orioles are always pretty spot on, and you're very knowledgeable about the team and about the game itself. So very happy to have you on here. Ryan, you good to go? Can't hear you. Figuring something out here with Ryan. We can't hear him. We can kind of see him. He's a little blurry, but can't hear him right now. In the meantime, I want to remind you today's show is brought to you by it says that he's muted by the host. Shouldn't be. I don't have you muted.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Hey!
There he is. There he is. There he is. Let's start this again. Today's show brought to you by Atman's. Are you craving that classic New York deli experience? Then look no further than the new Atman's Deli in Baltimore's Harbor Point. Corned beef piled high, hand-rolled bagels, and something different, a bar. Atman's Harbor Point. Go to atmansdeli.com for daily specials. And gentlemen, we will be remiss if we didn't begin this show on a somber note. The Orioles' longtime owner, Peter Angelos, passed away yesterday at the age of 94 after a pretty long battle with illness that was undisclosed. I heard rumors about what it was, but we just knew he was in declining health for quite some time. Peter Angelos passing away yesterday at the age of 94. And for me, Peter Angelos kind of hit a little bit close to home because he practiced law with my Uncle Frank. They ran for public office together back in the 60s. And I actually went to the Marylander of the Year event when Buck Showalter was named Marylander of the Year after the 2012 Orioles season. And Peter Angelos actually stopped me because he saw my name on my name tag and recognized the last name Valley. And he asked me if I was related to Francis Valley. I said, yeah, that was my Uncle Frank. And he talked to me a little bit about my Uncle Frank. And then something Peter never really does, he actually took a picture with me, which I have framed, hanging up. Well, actually, we're moving, so it's in a box right now. But got to have my picture taken with Peter Angelos. All he did was treat me with kindness and respect that evening. And the way I choose to remember Peter Angelos is a guy who is a hometown guy who bought the Orioles, wanted to keep the Orioles, stood up against the use of replacement players and the salary cap in the mid-90s when baseball went on strike. He was the guy who was only going to let the Nationals move into our backyard if he got Masson out of the deal and the rights over Masson. So I look at Peter Angelos for those things and for being the head of the team that was my favorite team of all time, the 96 and 97 Baltimore Orioles. That 97 Baltimore Orioles team to this day is still the greatest team I have ever watched in Baltimore. Should have gone to the World Series, should have won the World Series that year. The Orioles had a top 5 payroll every year from 1996 through 1999. I know that we all don't like what he did with John Miller and what he did with Pat Gillick and Davey Johnson, and the fact that he got gun shy on spending a ton of money after the Albert Bell fiasco. But I thought that what Peter Angelos did for this community, did for this team, was the pros far outweighed the cons. And I, for one, am a little sadder today to see Peter Angelos is no longer with us, even though it does mean that John Angelos will not be part of this team anymore once the sale is fully complete and David Rubenstein gets to make the final purchase with this club. Gentlemen, your thoughts on the passing of Peter Angelos?
Go ahead, Luke.
I'll just I thought you said it well, Paul. All I could really add to that, based on what you said, is seemed like he loved Baltimore, seemed like he wanted what was best for Baltimore. I know a lot of his charitable endeavors were not publicized because he didn't want them publicized. And And that's all I can really add. I never met the man, so I never had an experience like you did. But it seemed like he loved Baltimore and seemed like he wanted what was best for Baltimore, and that's really all I've got.
Right.
Yeah. On my end, it's interesting. I almost expected, this is news that we've been expecting to hear for years now, really, as long as he's been in declining health. We heard he was close to the end. I think back as far back as 2019, that he was really not doing well. I almost expected this news to come with a little more rejoicing on the end of Orioles fans, and maybe that's just because I didn't know the full story of Peter Angelos. He purchased the Orioles, I think, officially in October of 93. I was born in December of 94. So I knew Peter Angelos as the owner of my favorite baseball team, and my favorite baseball team sucked for my entire childhood. I didn't know. I've learned a lot about Peter Angelos in the last 24 hours or so that, to be honest, I didn't know. Luke, you mentioned his philanthropy. Paul, you mentioned, him purchasing the team because he wanted to keep it in Baltimore. And I can almost imagine that the feeling when he purchased the team back in 93 was kind of similar to what we're experiencing now with Rubenstein purchasing the team, in that it was someone with significant roots in the city of Baltimore who deeply cared about the Orioles and the success of the team. And, I think human condition is such that when someone passes away, we tend to remember the good things. He was a father, he was a husband, he was a son, he was a brother. And from that side of it, obviously you send, condolences and well wishes to the family. And I definitely think it's fair to say that the more we've learned about John, the better that Peter looks, in his legacy and, his vision of the Orioles, I suppose. And so, that's really all I've got.
Yeah, it's a sad day in Baltimore when to see Peter Angelos has passed, and I guess there's silver linings to everything. We now know that David Rubenstein has the ability to complete the full purchase of the Orioles, which was the ownership group had done the 40%, and then they were able to purchase the rest upon Peter's passing, and now that gets to happen sooner rather than later. But still a sad day to see Peter Angelos go, because what he did and what he meant to this community and how much he truly did love the Orioles and the city of Baltimore. So we will be remorseful. And again, this is something that, well, I guess not again, I didn't mention it, but Peter's wishes were to be part of a private burial and ceremony. You can send funds to charity in lieu of flowers. That's what Peter had wanted. So if you want to do that, I'm not sure how to do that, but you do have the ability to do that. Moving on, a big announcement this week. We all can look back to the winter meetings when Mike Elias said that Jackson Holliday had a strong possibility to make very strong possibility to make the opening day roster. Then Jackson Holliday goes out. He plays some solid second base, slashes 311, 354, 600, 954 in the spring with 3 doubles, 2 triples, 2 home runs, and 2 stolen bases. 5 of his 6 extra base hits came off of big league pitchers, including a double and a triple off of Zach Wheeler, grand slam off of Yusei Kikuchi, and a double off of Raisel Iglesias, a big-time closer for the Atlanta Braves. Looked comfortable defensively, both shortstop and second base. He did strike out 15 times in 48 plate appearances. However, he struck out 5 times in his first 6 plate appearances. So when you look at the fact that it was 10 times in 42 plate appearances, kind of what you'd expect out of a 20-year-old who has 1 full season in the minor leagues. But despite this success, despite holding his own and doing everything asked of him, Jackson Holliday was reassigned to minor league camp the other day, meaning that he will start the year at AAA Norfolk. He will not be part of the roster. And this sent a wave of knee-jerk reactions through Baltimore. I'll tell you that my knee-jerk reaction was, what more could this kid have done? They want him to face better left-handed pitching. I think he's going to face better left-handed pitching at the major league level than at the minor league level. They want him to get used to playing second base. The Orioles knew they had Gunnar Henderson and Jordan Westburg on the major league roster last year. They played Jackson Holliday at second base once a week. towards the end of the season. Why not play him more at second base if you want him to get more experience at second base? To me, the kid's an athlete. You can put him anywhere on the field, and I think he's going to hold his own. The more I think about the knee-jerk reaction is to sit there, gentlemen, and say, this is a service time manipulation. I don't think that's what this is. I really don't, because I think that they believe that he's good enough to win Rookie of the Year no matter when he comes up. But I also think they believe that they're facing a lot of left-handed pitching to start the year, and they want him to prove himself against left-handed pitching before they give him an everyday role at the major league level. And with the guys that they have on this roster who have earned the opportunity to play every day, Jackson Holliday may not have been an everyday player to start his big league career, and I don't think they want to bring him up until he's ready to take on an everyday role. Your thoughts?
Yeah, call me naive, call me silly. I think that they sent him down because they think that this is the best thing for his development. This is a kid who's 20 years old, who has, I believe, 57 games under his belt above high A.
Mm-hmm.
He could stand to gain something from going back to AAA. Absolutely, 100%. The reasons that Mike brought up are real. I will say that, as Paul, you mentioned, any quality left-handed pitching in AAA probably isn't going to be in AAA very long. So, but you will see some veteran left-handed arms. I saw that like a Richard Blyer got sent down to minor leagues by Miami. You'll see a lot of those type of guys. Those vets who have been in the major leagues for a long time who are now in AAA. He'll get an opportunity to face a lot of those types of guys. That's real. The second base thing, I was down in Sarasota for a week. He looked fine at second base. Could he use more time at second? Sure. So does he stand to benefit from more time at AAA? Yes. Same thing as Kobe Mayo. Same thing as Heston Kjerstad. It's not like he was the only one who had a really nice camp and was set down.
Mm-hmm.
And generally speaking, they've been pretty conservative with how they've treated their prospects. And I don't know if I would even call this conservative. He's 20 years old, again, with 57 games above high A. So I don't even know if this falls into the conservative category. And you mentioned that he had a great spring. I don't think they give a rip about what his stats were in the spring.
Right.
I really don't. I mean, I saw someone on Twitter say, and it was a great tweet. I'm sorry that I can't cite them, but it's almost like they have the roster in mind, like the entire roster in mind going into spring, and the only thing that's going to change it is an injury. So now, could Mike have maybe entered camp saying something like, look, we think it's more likely than not that Jackson's going to start at AAA to polish off his development, but if an injury happens, he needs to be ready at a moment's notice? Sure. Would that have been a more artful way to handle it? Probably. But that's not what happened, and it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And
the calming voice of Luke Jackson.
And I think this does mean that we'll see a lot of Jordan Westbrook at second base. And I liked him at second base last year. I thought the difference was very noticeable when he was at second rather than Frazier. So that's what I would assume. And no, it does not appear that fans will get a taste of Colton Wong. Like everyone was very upset about how they were going to have to watch Colton Wong this year. It doesn't seem like you're going to have to watch Colton Wong. So I would expect to see a lot of Westbrook at second, a lot of Mateo at second early on.
I never anticipated Colton Wong making this roster. I thought he was brought in for depth to see if he could maybe be a veteran presence, kind of push some guys a little bit further. But I never expected him to make the roster. Ryan, your thoughts on Jackson Holliday?
Yeah, I agree with you both wholeheartedly, Luke. That was very well stated. I think independent of his performance and the fact that I personally believe he is without a doubt one of our best 26 guys. I do, my knee-jerk reaction was fury because he had such a great spring, and we were told back in December that he would have a very strong possibility to make the team. And we wanted to see him, and I know the fans wanted to see him run down the orange carpet on opening day. I don't necessarily agree that he needs more run at second base, although it is true that he hasn't played there a ton. But like you said, Paul is a great athlete. I will agree that he could stand to face some better left-handed pitching. But like you also said, Paul, you're going to get that at the big league level as well, especially in the first few weeks of the season the Orioles have a lot of lefties that they're going to be facing, including Patrick Sandoval on opening day with the Angels. The time argument, I tend to agree, Elias, that this did not play a factor. And, we saw some reactions on social media that, this will give Jackson Holliday another year of, team control through 2030. Well, if he finishes top 2 in Rookie of the Year voting, that goes away. We saw it with Adley Rutschman. Adley finished second in Rookie of the Year. He does not get that extra year. That extra year of service time comes back, right? So, and because he's not on the opening day roster, if he finishes in that top 2, you don't get the draft pick, which would be in the 30s. The Orioles have taken guys like Jordan Westburg and Gunnar Henderson in that range in the draft. So the fact that people think he was kept down for service time, I don't see it, because logistically it doesn't even make sense. So obviously a little bit of disappointment that Holliday won't be breaking camp with the team. I will think it will be good for him to play second base every day, and be, not in a platoon role at the big league level. So I'm excited to see him up as soon as that may be, whether it's, near the end of April or later in the season. And he's going to come up and he's going to make an impact.
When do we think that we're going to see Jackson Holliday make his big league debut? Now, this is all dependent on him going down and playing well. He can't get off to a slow start, and we expect to see him by the end of April, beginning of May. But if he gets off to the start that we think Jackson Holliday's going to get off to, when should we realistically expect to see him on this big league roster?
Mid-May. That would be around mid-May. Like, you would have to ensure that he didn't win Rookie of the Year, you would probably have to wait until like July 1st, and they're not going to wait until July 1st. Mm-hmm. I would say, mid to late May. That makes sense to me.
Right.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. For selfish reasons, I hope it's before then, only because my bachelor party, we're going to Cincinnati to see the Orioles play the Reds in it's the first weekend of May. Then we're sitting out in right center field for one of the games, so I would love to have a chance to catch his first big league homer. But I agree, Luke. I think it's more likely mid to late May.
Yeah, I think it's going to be sometime in May. I'm leaning more towards the latter half of May, if I'm being perfectly honest, because you also have to think that somebody's got to be playing at least mediocre or poor for him to have to come up, right? Because they're not just going to say, like, if Ramon Arias is hitting 280 with 5 home runs by the time he gets to mid-May, and Jordan Westburg's hitting 270 with 9 home runs by mid-May, you're not just going to start playing somebody over them. It's going to have to take poor performance. It's going to have to take a trade, or it's going to have to take an injury for him to come up here, because they don't want to bring him up and put him on the bench. That doesn't do him any good. But I do think that he is going to find himself on a big league roster at some point in May. It's just a matter of when, not if, in my opinion. And everybody out there, we know you're bummed about Jackson Holliday not being on the opening day roster, but the betting markets are still very excited about him. At Superbook, he's still the favorite to win American League Rookie of the Year. If you're still bullish about what he's going to do, you can get slightly better odds at plus 225. Or if you think this badly hurts his chances, you can bet the Rangers' Wyatt Langford at plus 300 or Evan Carter at plus 375 when you sign up at Superbook. Use the code PressBox23 and you'll receive a same-day first bet match up to $250, win or lose. Gentlemen, another thing that we've been talking about, and I got lambasted, however the hell you say it. Probably shouldn't say it, but I don't know how to say it, on Twitter last week, because, Ryan, on our show last Saturday, we talked about Corbin Burnes and what we needed to see out of him the last 2 starts. And we don't really need to see anything out of him because he's freaking Corbin Burnes, right? But he got lit up all spring. And then I'm working an open house last Saturday, and I following a game cast on my phone, and I see that Corbin Burnes gave up back-to-back home runs, had 2 errant pickoff attempts that led to 2 more runs, and he gave up 4 runs in that second inning. And I tweeted out that I still believe and have faith in Corbin Burnes, but I'm starting to develop a little bit of concern over what he's done this spring. Simply because of the fact that, Ryan, we talked about, we expected him to dominate in his penultimate start last week, and then dominate again in his last start before heading to opening day to make his first start for the Orioles on May 28th, and he hadn't done that. He then went out after that second inning and retired the next 11 batters in order. He got through the third, fourth, and fifth innings on 29 pitches, 23 strikes, and looked like Corbin Burnes. And then last night he went out again, 5 in the third innings, 5 hits, no walks, 4 strikeouts, 1 earned run, 2 total. Threw just 57 pitches and worked in the bullpen a little bit afterwards. Lowered the spring ERA to 6.75, but looked like Corbin Burnes each of the last 2 starts. Is this guy ready to make a Cy Young run for the Orioles in 2024?
Well, that would certainly be helpful for the Orioles, right? Yeah, I was actually at that start that you were talking about, where the second inning wasn't good, and then the last 3 innings were really good. And he was really excited after that start, talking about how something had clicked with him and Adley Rutschman. And it was funny, he had a mound visit from Rutschman after, I guess it was the second home run. And after that, they just really locked in. And I will say that those 2 throwing errors were a part of that inning. And one of them was with Santander at first base, and with the true first baseman over there, they might have had a pickoff. So, and for me, when I saw him, he just looked like Corbin Burnes. I didn't see anything. It just looked like a veteran, high-level pitcher getting his work in. And yesterday it sort of looked like the same thing. And so I expect that when the lights come on Thursday, that he's going to be ready to roll. It doesn't mean that he's going to throw 7 shutout innings, but he's going to be prepared for that start. And I remember just how it was about a week ago, just how excited he was after that second to last start that he had in spring, about the chemistry that he had found with Rutschman. And so, and I will say that, yeah, he had been with the Brewers since 2016. That's when he was drafted. And it was a good thing that they traded for him before camp started, so that he had a full camp with Rutschman, with McCann, with the pitching staff here, because everything's totally new for him right now. And it takes a little while to build that chemistry, to build that bond between battery mates. So I expect him to have a real solid year.
Yeah, and he dealt with a few catcher changes over in Milwaukee as well. And his spring stats to this point in his career have not been spectacular. And then we've seen what he's gone out and been able to do in the regular season. And ever since, that bad second inning against the Red Sox last week, he had that meeting with Rutschman, and then something clicked. And since then, he's been spectacular. The results have been great, and the efficiency has been remarkable. I believe he's thrown under 100 pitches to complete his final 8 1/3 innings. So that's really good to see. I think he's ready. I'm not concerned. I'm excited to have a bona fide ace in the rotation, and I can't wait to see him throw his first pitch on Thursday.
Yeah, watching him pitch in that game yesterday, getting to watch Corbin Burnes be Corbin Burnes for the first time, really, since he got here, because that he was working on things in his first televised start, and it wasn't really him trying to do what Corbin Burnes does. He's trying to get his work in and figure some stuff out and get used to the catchers that he should be thrown to all year. Watching him be Corbin Burnes yesterday was something that, I had to stop for a second and be like, when's the last time we saw a pitcher do this? Just a smooth, repeatable delivery. It looked like low effort to just dot and paint. Just so pitch efficient, and just a confidence that he's carrying on the mound that you can just see with every pitch that he throws. It's something that I haven't seen in Baltimore in a long time. We've seen some good. We just watched Kyle Bradish throw the first sub 3 ERA with 30 starts or more for the Orioles since 1992. And Bradish was that dude last year. Corbin Burnes is just that much more that dude, and you saw that in that start last night. And I, for one, can't wait to be sitting out there in left field when he makes his opening day start on Thursday. I am so excited about it, and I want to take this time to just. I've been reminded how much the scum of the earth resides on Twitter and on social media. Oh my gosh. You can't say anything negative or anything remotely questioning anybody on this team or in this front office without people just attacking you in ways that are just beyond comprehension. I never actually said I expected Corbin Burnes to fall off a cliff this year. I was just, I'm an Orioles fan, guys, and If you're an Orioles fan like me and you're around my age, you remember Kevin Brown and David Wells and Rick Helling and Kevin Millwood and Ubaldo Jimenez and Giovanni Gallardo and Alex Cobb. And then you look around the rest of Major League Baseball and you remember the deterioration stars like Barry Zito and Tim Lincecum, Felix Hernandez, Dontrell Willis, Mike Hampton, Jake Peavy, Roy Oswalt. All of it seemed to happen overnight. So when you see that Corbin Burnes last year had an ERA around 3.39, his worst season, which would have been one of the Orioles' best seasons in the last few decades, his worst season, then you see him come out and get lit up in spring training. I think it's natural human reaction to have a little bit of something going on in the back of your head to say, what's going on here? Not to say that it's like a legitimate questioning, but it's okay to wonder about that. And I just if you're on social media completely attacking people and tearing them down and making them feel like human garbage, please go get help. Please go get help, because we all have opinions and we're allowed to express them and we should be able to express them without you making somebody to completely trying to destroy somebody's entire life for thinking for being a little worried about Corbin Burnes. That's all I want to say about that. Tyler Wells followed Corbin Burnes in relief through 3 2/3 scoreless innings. He surrendered 4 hits, a walk, and he struck out 4. Tyler Wells is going to be the Orioles' number 3 pitcher in this rotation. He'll get that start on Sunday next Sunday against the Angels. For me, I get it, because he led the American League in WHIP last year and had a 3.18 ERA at the All-Star break. He led the league in WHIP and had a 3.18 ERA. His arm, he got fatigued. That's all there is to it. Came back as reliever and was really sound again for the team. I think when healthy and pitching at his best, Tyler Wells deserves to be the number 3 on this team with Kyle Bradish and John Means on the IL to start the year. But are you guys surprised to see that Tyler Wells kind of leapfrogged Dean Kramer to get into that position for the Orioles in that rotation?
No, because that might also have something to do with matchups. Where do they want a fly ball pitcher? Who do they want a fly ball pitcher throwing against? They want to throw against the Angels. Do they want him throwing against the Royals? I think that's who they play in the second series, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that might have something to do with that as well. I saw Tyler throw, and I think it was this time last week, if I'm not mistaken, on Sunday, and looked like Tyler Wells, pound the zone, tons of strikes, forcing a lot of early contact, a lot of fly balls. One of them went over the fence. That's going to happen with Tyler. And he just gets such a great angle because he's 6'8", and that high fastball really gets on guys quicker than his 93, 94 mile an hour velocity would suggest it does. And he just looked like Tyler. And for me, I'll tell you the same thing I said on Glenn's show when I was down in Sarasota. He's way too good to break down in July. Yeah. And this is going to be his 3rd chance to show that he can hold up for a full season. And obviously it's really important for the Orioles that he can show that he does that, because when he's on the mound and he's healthy and he's fresh, he's good. And they just need to do that. They just need that for a full season, and that's easier said than done. Stan wrote a column for PressBoxOnline.com where he was talking about, the measures they could take with him, proactive measures they could take with him to make sure that he makes it, to September and October. One of them was like maybe skipping one start a month. Maybe it was going every once in a while, shortening them up and making a start like 4 or 5 innings from him as by design. I don't know, but they do need him to make it through a full season, because they would be a better team with him in the rotation for a full year, assuming that he's fresh and healthy during that time.
Before Ryan goes, I just want to remind everybody that we do try to be interactive on the show. We have a segment towards the end of every show where we like to engage with you and read your chats and your comments. So if you want to get your thoughts in on the show, you want to take part in the conversation with us about this team as we had the opening day, please put your chats on the show, and we will gladly read them and engage with you when we come to that point in the show later this morning. Ryan, go ahead.
And we'll see if Randall knows that the show's on Sunday this week. I much prefer Tyler Wells as a 5. With that said, under these circumstances, with the injuries to Bradish and John Means, I'm perfectly content with him being our number 3 going into the season. All Tyler Wells has done for this Orioles team since he's been up is pitch like a dog. He's got that fire on the mound. He knows how to attack hitters. The results have been there for him. And I'm optimistic about him coming into the season. It was funny last night. typically in spring, pitchers, once their outing is over, if they need to get in some more work, they'll go over to the bullpen and throw with one of the guys out there. At Ed Smith Stadium, it was the final home game. Wells finished out the game, and then to get his final work in, through some live BP while they had music blasting and fireworks going off behind him. So that was a fun thing. I know the guys like Tyler Wells. He's a great dude. I've had a chance to meet him a couple times. Super nice guy. Wish him nothing but the best. And like I said, very optimistic about Wells.
Yeah, I'm optimistic about this rotation in general. We're going to talk about this in a couple of segments from now. But I think that if you look at the Orioles rotation, it's close to what you expected to what it was last year. Kyle Bradish isn't here, but he also got hurt at the beginning of the season, missed a couple of starts anyway because he took that line drive off the foot. Kyle Gibson was your opening day starter last year. Now it's Corbin Burnes. You have Grayson Rodriguez, who pitched to a 2.5 ERA down the stretch. I think that the Orioles, especially with their schedule to start the year, I think that they're going to be able to more than tread water until hopefully Means and Bradish get back in the early part of this season. But again, we'll get into that here in a little bit. Want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by Ruth's Chris. Whether you're celebrating a special milestone, entertaining clients, or simply enjoying a night out, count on Ruth's Chris to deliver to you the finest steaks, the best service, and a level of hospitality that has made Ruth's Chris one of the most revered names in steak since 1965. So go make your reservation right now at ruthschris.com. And gentlemen, we've got some roster decisions coming here with the Orioles. Starting rotation has been announced: Corbin Burnes, Grayson Rodriguez, Tyler Wells, and Dean Kramer, with Cole Irvin being your number 5 starter. Julio Teheran did not make the team. He exercised his opt-out, leaving the Orioles without a long man in the bullpen. Ryan, they optioned Brian Baker this morning. So we can say confidently that the bullpen spots are going to belong to Craig Kimbrell, Yennier Cano, Danny Coulombe, Dylan Tate, Cionel Perez, Mike Baumann, and Keegan Aiken, with one spot remaining, and it's really going to come down to Jacob Webb and Jonathan Heasley. Jacob Webb has no options remaining, which could be the deciding factor. Ryan, I'll let you go first on this one. Confidence in the Orioles bullpen. Do you think they need another late spring move like they did last year to get Danny Coulombe, or do you think this is where the team is and it's probably going to be Jacob Webb?
Yeah, I don't love it. I would love it a lot more if we had, a Tyler Wells or a Cole Irvin able to pitch in long after the acquisition of Corbin Burnes, before we knew about the injury to Bradish and the, kind of slow progression of John Means. I don't love the state of the bullpen. I don't hate it, but, especially without Felix Bautista, that's a huge glaring loss on the back end there. We've talked about Jacob Webb and how, when we first got him from the Angels off of waivers, it seemed like he might have been another, oh my God, Elias did it again kind of find. And then he completely fell off towards the end of the season and into the postseason. Jonathan Heasley was an offseason acquisition that didn't really move the needle at all for me. I'm surprised that he's made it this far, to be perfectly honest, but the Orioles seem to like his stuff. I do think that spot is going to go to Webb, as Heasley does have an option left. There's certainly room for improvement. I would always love to see an addition. I think that, you can never have too many capable arms in your big league bullpen, and especially down at AAA. I was a little surprised that they sent Nick Vespi back down again, although they do already have 3 lefties in Coulombe, Perez, and Aiken. But Vespi pitched well this spring. He had, I think, just one bad outing. The bullpen leaves room for improvement, but I think that's the only real weakness on this team.
Luke?
Yeah, I concur with what Ryan had to say. When I went down to Sarasota, one of the things that I was not banking on seeing was that, Keegan Aiken's a lock for this bullpen. And then I saw him my first game down there, and I thought to myself, oh, this looks like the Keegan Aiken from the first half of 22. And a few days later, I talked to Keegan in the clubhouse, said that he's fully healthy, ready to roll. And you could tell that the tempo is back in his delivery. The hop in his fastball is back. And so that was probably one of the biggest surprises when I got down to Sarasota was that, oh, Keegan looks like he did in 22. And remember in 22, I think it was 27 outings of 6 or more outs.
Mm-hmm.
He was a horse. I think he was like 81 innings for the season or thereabouts. Now, they haven't stretched him out in spring, and probably because they're easing him back from the back injury last year. And so I don't know if this is all a long way of saying that I don't know if he's the same length option that he was back in 22. In terms of who that length option could be right now, I don't know. And maybe it is a late spring move like Danny Kalum last year, where they pick someone up for cash or whatever the case may be, or they swap out of options guys. We'll have to see in the next few days whether that presents itself or not. But would the bullpen look better if you had Kyle Bradish in the rotation and you could bump Cole Irvin to the long relief role, or if getting Corbin Burnes didn't require giving up DL Hall? Sure, but this is where the Orioles are, and I think they have enough to hold down games. And we'll just have to see how it develops. Like I was saying on Glenn's show about a week ago, bullpens are weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can have a great-looking bullpen, and that does not mean it's going to perform great because each of those relievers is so volatile. And you could have a bullpen of cast-offs and waiver claims that performs great. You just don't know. And so every bullpen, regardless of what you think about it going into a season, is going to take on its own personality. And we'll just have to see which personality this bullpen takes on. Hopefully it's a good one.
For sure. Yeah, no, hopefully it's a good one. I have confidence in the back end. Keegan Aiken, he earned the right to be on this roster. He pitched lights out all spring. I personally have not had as much faith in Keegan Aiken as others, even in 2022. I mean, yeah, the first 2 months of the season, he was going out there. If he threw 20 pitches, 16 were strikes. He was very good to start the year. But then I noticed he'd come in and he'd leave with not giving up an earned run, but allowing 2 inherited runners to score. I watched him come into a couple of games last year with 1 out and a runner on first base, and that guy ended up scoring in the inning, but Aiken didn't get charged with a run. And that's where and I used to see that with Michael Givens at the beginning of his career in the Orioles bullpen, where he didn't give up a lot of his own runs, but he allowed a lot of inherited runners to score. And that's what makes me nervous with Keegan Aiken, is that he'll come into a situation and allow somebody that's already on base to get across home plate. But from all the reports, he's showed up in great shape. Like you said, Luke, the jump on his fastball is back. He looks to be back to the form he was in 2022. So I'm willing to, give him the benefit of the doubt here and see what he can do in the.
And I'll also mention that Dylan Tate looked like he was back to 22 form in terms of the sink on his fastball and the bite on his slider.
Mm-hmm.
And if he can get back to that form, that's a big deal for the Orioles.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Because he was, as Brandon Hyde mentioned, in one of the media sessions down there, he was one of the best right-on-right relievers in baseball in 2022. And I looked up his numbers against right-handed hitters in 22, and he was right. He really was. He was dominant against those guys. And if they can have that kind of right-on-right option to go with Yennier Cano, that would be a big deal for this team.
Absolutely. The bullpen kind of excites me when I think about what could be back there. You're hoping that CNL Perez was just working on stuff this spring because he didn't look good. You're hoping that Yennier Cano, that the last couple of outings he had where he didn't look good, that was just, again, him working on things. But if all these guys are right and pitching well, this bullpen, I think, could be a force for this team. It just sucks that I have Felix Bautista, but, the Orioles have something in common with the other 29 teams now because nobody else has Felix Bautista either. Now, Mike Elias said he expects both John Means and Kyle Bradish back pitching for the Orioles in the early first half of the season. What does that look like for you guys? And what's the early part of the first half of the season? Are we talking late April, early May? We talking late May? I think once we get to June, you're past the early part of the season. What does it look like when he says early first half of the season?
Was I the only one surprised by that?
I was very surprised.
So I was surprised with Kyle Bradish. John Means not necessarily.
Okay, I was surprised when I heard early part of again, A, what does that mean, and B, with Kyle Bradish, we know that it seems like he has or at least had some sort of damage in his UCL.
Mm-hmm.
And does this mean that the PRP injection worked, and that now it's just like building up? I don't know. With John Means. Remember, I mean, it's been 3 years since he put together any sort of significant workload.
Mm-hmm.
And last year, when he was initially getting ramped up down in Florida, he got hurt. And then he had, I believe it was 6 rehab starts and then 4 major league starts. And only a handful of those were really full go starts. And then he got hurt again. So I don't know where his body is and whether he can hold up through a rehab assignment and a significant stretch of major league starts. We're going to see. But yeah, I was a little surprised by what Mike had to say there. And to be fair, we're not really sure what he meant by that. And I guess we'll find out soon enough. I wish we had a little more clarity on what the outlook for Bradish and Means are, but we don't. So here we are.
Right.
Yeah, if he's talking May, that's definitely surprising for me. I do genuinely believe that Means isn't necessarily hurt, that he's just more, taking it slow. Luke said, he hasn't really had a full workload in quite some time. So, it's going to take a bit for him to really get to that point where he's going to be able to come out and give us, 5-6 innings on a regular basis. So Means I could see back, late April, early to mid-May. I think that's conceivable. Bradish, maybe it's just because of the connotation surrounding pitchers and UCL injuries, but I am terrified of him pitching in game action that soon. I fear an aggravation of the UCL injury. I still, in the back of my mind, feel like he is going to need Tommy John surgery. Maybe that's just a pessimist in me speaking, but I don't see Bradish back in the first half of the season at all, I don't think. Obviously, that would be great. I think it would bode well for the team, especially if that PRP injection really did, work the way it seems to have worked. He's been throwing. He seems to be throwing at just about full strength, not really working in a ton of off speed yet, but, has been throwing some fastballs. His mechanics look good. He doesn't really look like he's favoring anything from what I've seen. But yeah, I getting an early spring notification that Bradish has UCL damage and then an MRI confirming that it's scary. I don't think that we can expect. I'm not sure we can expect any innings from Bradish this year, let alone 80 to 100 to 120. I just don't see it.
Right.
Good. Well, I look at it and I see, one, we're not talking about a grade 3 tear here. We're talking about a grade 1 sprain, right? Which is
likely, right?
Yeah, that's what they said. You look at the impact of PRP injections on grade 1 through grade 3 sprains, and they're pretty they have pretty good results. I think it's something like 64% of grade 3 sprains are corrected with the PRP injection, and grade 1 and grade 2 strains is something like 100% of the time when that happens. The number's pretty up there for good results. And when it's a low grade sprain, you look at a guy like Masahiro Tanaka, who pitched his entire career with a partial tear of his UCL. And he threw like 8 different pitches. I'm cautiously optimistic about Kyle Bradish. I think that this is something that's that I'm no doctor. I'll leave that to my dad. But for me, I'm cautiously optimistic. This is something that's been corrected with the PRP. It looked like he was throwing with force in that video that we all saw from him throwing on a mound yesterday. And I expect him to come out and pitch well. And if he doesn't, then the Orioles will make a move. They'll go out and make a trade to get somebody for that rotation, because I think we can all agree that we don't have the most confidence in the world with Cole Irvin being in that rotation. Now, before we get to that, I want to remind everybody that this segment of today's show is brought to you by Glenn Clark Radio. If you missed anything from Glenn Clark Radio this week, including conversation with Joe Flacco, Matt Wieters, JJ Hardy, Arthur Millette, and more, you can find them in the Glenn Clark Radio Week in Review feature today at PressBoxOnline.com. Now, as we're talking about this rotation, if you give me the top four that the Orioles have in this rotation, you give me Corbin Burnes, Grayson Rodriguez, Tyler Wells, and Dean Kramer. I mean, Dean Kramer, for as bad as he was last April, he was damn good from the beginning of May through the end of the season. 3.5 ERA. His last two seasons combined, his ERA is 3.74 with 21 wins to 12 losses over those two seasons. And he's your number 4 starter. The Orioles' top 4, I'm confident in as it stands right now. Cole Irvin, left-handed pitcher, so you're kind of negating the loss of John Means there. We saw him hitting 96 at times this spring with his fastball, so he's got that increase in velocity. The issue is after 2 scoreless starts in his first 2 outings in spring training, his last 2 outings, 10 runs, 9 walks. What caused Cole Irvin to have such a poor first 3 starts with Baltimore last year before getting demoted to the minor leagues was wildness. When he came back up, he was Cole Irvin. He wasn't walking anybody. What's going on with Cole Irvin? Luke, you were down in Sarasota. I'm assuming you saw him throw a little bit while you were down there. Is this something where he's also working on things, or did he just lose control and is struggling to find it?
Well, I saw him once down there. It was against the Braves in Sarasota, and the Braves brought along a few regulars, and those regulars got to him. So, but exactly what you said, that what you're concerned about is what ailed him early last year in terms of the walks. And it wasn't like he was like hitting the backstop. It was like, it's just like a little bit off the zone. Right. But it was enough to walk a lot of people. And for a guy like Cole, if he walks a lot of people, he doesn't necessarily have the strikeout stuff to get himself out of those jams.
Right.
And so he's got to be able to pound the zone. And I think one of the things that he was really working on this spring was being able to pitch inside to right-handed hitters and being able to open up, which opens up the outer half of the plate to those guys. And I don't know how successful he was with that, but that would be a concern with me, what you mentioned, Paul, because he doesn't have an option this year. But you had it like sort of a get out of jail free card last year with him, and which was, I'm sure, one of the reasons why they acquired him, that he did have an option, that if something went sideways, that they could set him down and he could fix it down there. This year, they don't have that luxury. So to me, that is a little bit of a concern, no doubt.
Yeah, I think, if you're a veteran pitcher and you have, whether it's some kind of mechanical issue that's preventing him from hitting his spots, typically I think that's what we see when guys are close but not quite in the zone, is that, it's something with their release point or something's breaking down in their mechanics, in their delivery. Irvin's a veteran at this point. He's got to be able to figure that out on the go. He's got to be able to figure that out in the major leagues. And so, like you said, Luke, we had to get out of jail free card with him last year with that one option remaining. That's off the table. So you're kind of stuck with him. He's not a DFA candidate, especially considering the state of, guys on this team who are able to give you length at this point. I hope it doesn't become a pride thing. I believe Darell Hernandez won Athletics Minor League Player of the Year last year, and he was the guy we gave up for Irvin. You gotta get results from him. So, ideally he'll be able to, fix whatever is going wrong with his mechanics, allow him to pound the zone, because like you both have said, he doesn't have the strikeout stuff to get out of jams that he creates, and putting guys on base without putting the ball in play is only going to magnify that. So, hopefully he's able to settle in and be a half decent 5 for us in the rotation.
Guys, in my heart of hearts, I couldn't and I still can't fathom how the Orioles can go into the season with their rotation being one injury away from Albert Suarez being called up to take a spot in that rotation. I think that they did themselves a disservice by not acquiring one more legit big league starter, to the point where you don't have to have Cole Irvin in your rotation. He can fill that role that Adam Both was supposed to fill for the team last year. I stopped myself so many. So I have to make videos like content videos for what I do for a career as a mortgage loan originator, and some of that stuff has to be stuff that has nothing to do with mortgages. It shows people a little bit about me. So I've been making Orioles videos throughout this spring training, and I stopped myself like 8 different times this past week from making a video where I was going to say that I think a trade is coming for a starting pitcher this spring. I no longer believe that trade is coming, but I thought it made too much sense not to do it. How has this team not addressed the real issue that one more injury and your rotation's crumbling?
Yeah, one thing I will say is that it's very, very, very difficult to make a trade for a starting pitcher this time of year because every single team right now is worried about the innings that they're going to get out of their rotation, and they don't want to subtract from their rotation and make that even more of an issue because even the teams that aren't going to compete this year and are in rebuild mode have to get through the season.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just very difficult to swing a trade for a starting pitcher. Has a starting pitcher been moved this spring?
Not that I've seen.
I don't think so, and I don't think it's going to happen.
Just Dylan Cease, I believe.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And that's a little bit of a different situation. He's been on the block for the past year, but and I don't know. I was kind of underwhelmed by the package that the Padres gave up, but it seemed like Chicago might have been like zeroed in on getting pitching as the headliners in that. Anyway, it seemed like there were a couple teams that were interested that could have done better than that. But anyway, are you right to be concerned about that? Yes. Is there anything realistic that the Orioles could do about it at this point? Maybe, maybe not. I probably lean toward no at this point. It's just because like 29 other teams are having the same exact conversation.
Sure.
If one starter goes down, what the hell are we doing? So, and that's just the nature of it, and it's unfortunate, but that's what it is. And there are a lot of innings to pitch, and there's really not enough starting pitching to go around. That's just the nature of it.
And we've already mentioned that there's not currently a long man in the bullpen, unless someone like Keegan Aiken's going to be able to give you 2 or 3 innings. But like you said, Luke, he hasn't really been stretched out that way this spring.
Right.
I'm Blake Snell's off the table now. We've talked about free agent pitching options. Blake Snell's gone. Michael Lorenzen signed a 1-year, $4.5 million deal with the Rangers, which, by the way, the Orioles could have and I think should have done in a heartbeat. Jordan Montgomery is still out there. I don't know if the Orioles are involved in his market at all, but like you both have said, we're one injury away from disaster here. I'm curious if Superbook has a line on Bruce Zimmerman starts this year, because I might consider taking that over based on what we're looking at right now. But I'll leave it at that.
And to be fair, I have heard that Bruce looks good and that he looks healthier than he was last year, and I do think that he'll probably start some games for the Orioles this year, because what's the average number of starters that a major league team used in 2023? It was like 12, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be more than the 5 that the Orioles start with. I can tell you that.
For sure.
And that's it. And that was it. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm not knocking Bruce. It just he always seems to find a way back onto his roster at some point in the season.
Hey, left-handed and breathing. And so your point about Michael Lorenzen, I think, is a good one. He signed with the Rangers, obviously late in camp, and his price had dropped. He was probably looking for a 2-year deal for much of the offseason. That wasn't going to come. Then he was probably looking for something like 1 year, $10 million. That didn't come. So he ends up signing for 1 year, $4.5 million. And it seems like as soon as he's ready, he's going to enter the rotation. And the Rangers giving them that opportunity. I don't know if the Orioles would have been willing to give him that opportunity that, hey, whenever you're ready, you're going to go into the rotation. Montgomery, so that's a weird one, because it certainly seems to me that Boris is marketing him as like a legit number 2 starter, which is like 25 times 6 or 7. And teams are valuing him as like more of a solid number 3, which is like 18 times 4. So that's a big gap that would have to be, and that would explain why he's still out there. If that is really the gap that we're talking about, that one side is valuing him as a number 2 and the other is a number 3, that would explain why he's still out there.
It kind of blows my mind that the player in Jordan Montgomery hasn't stepped up to Boris and said, dude, I gotta be on a team right now. Let's do something and then try this again next year. Like, I gotta get on a team. It's almost April.
Right.
And we remember what happened with Alex Cobb here. These guys like Snell and Montgomery and Lorenzen. Now, sure, they've been pitching the entire spring. They just haven't been pitching on a team at a facility, at a spring training facility. But no doubt they've been getting their work in, but you can only simulate so much live game action. I just can't imagine that any of these guys are going to be able to go out there and give them quality innings, significant innings that are quality to start the year. I think they're behind the 8 ball now. I'd love to have Jordan Montgomery, but I don't think Jordan Montgomery would come to the Orioles right now, slide right into their rotation, and be able to give them what he gave the Texas Rangers down the stretch last year.
Yeah, and that would always be the fear when you sign someone late in camp, that he's going to rush to get ready and that he's never going to be right that season. And you mentioned Alex Cobb, and I think we're scarred for life for that experience about signing pitchers late and what that can turn into. He was never right. He was never right his entire time in Baltimore. So, I think that's a very good point.
Yeah. I also want to point out that the powers that be at PressBox have given us the okay to go over today. We still got quite a lot to cover. If that's all right with you, Luke, I don't know if you have any.
I got nowhere to be today, brother.
All right. Awesome. So we have more time. We're not ending things here in 4 minutes. Still got a lot to talk about. Today's show brought to you by Help My Gambling Problem. If you or a loved one has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit helpmygamblingproblem.org for free confidential services. Sticking with the rotation, I think we can all assume that Cole Irvin is the first man out when the first of Bradish or Means comes back. When you get Kyle Bradish and John Means back, I think you look at a rotation that's Burnes, Grayson Rodriguez, Tyler Wells, Kyle Bradish, and John Means, just because of the way the rotation is lined up at this point. Does Wells move to the bullpen, or is it Dean Kramer once both of those guys are back, assuming they are both back at some point this year?
Oh, I think the Orioles are probably so far away from having to make that decision and having that be a reality. I think that they would welcome trying to fit 7 starters in somewhere, find roles for 7 starters. I think that I think a lot of hoops have to be jumped through first in order to get there, in terms of Bradish's health, in terms of John making it through a rehab assignment healthy.
Sure.
And then the other 5 starters remaining healthy as well. So I think that would be an awesome problem to have, such that it wouldn't even be a problem. You would just take your 5 guys. If you really got 7 healthy starters, then you would start your best 5. Or you could even go to a 6-man rotation to try to help out Tyler Wells.
Yeah.
To a lesser extent, Grayson Rodriguez. But we are a long way from that. And like I said, a lot of hurdles to cross, a lot of hoops to cross. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm with you 100%. It depends on injuries, depends on performance. It's a tough call for me personally, at this point in time, just because we've seen Tyler Wells pitch out of the bullpen and do it very well. And I think he would be a good presence in this bullpen. With that said, I love him as a starter too. And, you look at Dean Kramer, he's a guy who's been very good for us out of the rotation. We haven't seen him pitch a ton out of the bullpen, if at all, really. At least in a couple years. So, yeah, I think that's something that, it's a bridge we'll cross when we get to it.
Yeah, I look at this rotation and I look at Tyler Wells, and Tyler Wells is one of those guys that every team wants, because you can put him in your rotation and he can be absolutely dominant, right? Or you can put him in your bullpen and he can be absolutely dominant. Like, there aren't many guys. I mean, we're talking like, I hate to even say this because I know I'm going to get attacked for it. You're talking like John Smoltz, right? A guy who can be an elite starting pitcher, or he can be an elite bullpen piece. I'm not saying Tyler Wells is John Smoltz and he's going to the Hall of Fame, but that's the type of pitcher that you're looking at that can be that effective in either role. For me, I'd rather see Tyler Wells stay in the rotation, because we're talking about pitch efficiency with Corbin Burnes and how amazing it is to see how efficient he can be. You look at Tyler Wells in 2022 when he got his first crack at joining this starting rotation, and they were like, we only want him to go 3 innings. Well, he threw 3 innings and 35 pitches, right? They want him to throw 65 pitches and go 4 innings. He threw 6 innings and 65 pitches. So I look at Tyler Wells and I see a guy who can be a force in this bullpen, especially pitching out of the 3 slot in that rotation. I think that he's earned the right to be in this rotation. And if he said that he spent all off season getting himself in the shape that he needs to be in to make it through an entire season as a starting pitcher. If he's fixed that issue and he can stay in this rotation all season, I think he's earned the right to do that. I'm excited to see what he can do in 2024 for the Orioles. We're going to move to the offensive side of things here. Adley Rutschman, James McCann are your catchers. Your infield is going to be Ryan Mountcastle, Ryan O'Hearn, Jordan Westbrook, Gunnar Henderson, and Ramon Urias. Your outfield, Austin Hayes, Cedric Mullins, Anthony Santander, and Colton Cowser. Utility is Jorge Mateo. Gentlemen, there is one spot left. It's not Jackson Holiday. Heston Kjerstad and Kyle Stowers have been reassigned. Kobe Mayo and Kobe Mayo and Connor Norby were both reassigned. Colton Wong has opted out and been told he's not going to make this roster. Nick Maton ain't making this team. 0 for 23 this spring, something like 12 strikeouts. Tyler Nevin has hit better than I've ever seen him hit this spring, but he's a 203 hitter and 266 career bats. And then you have Ryan.
We talked about it, Paul. We talked about it a few weeks ago. He's out of options. The team loves him. Get ready.
We said at the beginning of spring training that we were going to see Ryan McKenna run down the orange carpet on opening day. It's going to be Ryan McKenna. For some reason, Brandon Hyde has convinced himself that Ryan McKenna can hit left-handed pitching. First and foremost, Ryan McKenna can't hit any pitching. But he's a career 222 hitter against right-handed pitching and a career 221 hitter against left-handed pitching. So I know that he hit 270 in 2022 against lefties, and he hit 250, which was lower than his 265 mark against righties this past year against lefties. But this guy isn't Jorge Mateo, who just tears the cover off the ball against lefties. He's Ryan McKenna. And Kyle Stowers led the majors in home runs this spring. And I'm not saying that Kyle Stowers deserves to be on this roster, but Heston Kjerstad is the number 2 overall pick in the draft. He looked like a monster last year. We expect him to be a monster for this Orioles team and hit in the middle of their order. I know that Ryan McKenna is a righty, and they want to get righty who can play all 3 outfield spots. But if you have a guy like Kyle Stowers who has reverse splits like he has, where he's got over 900 OPS in his minor league career and went 7 for 15 with 4 home runs against lefties this spring, doesn't that kind of negate the need for a Ryan McKenna? And I get it. He's out of options, and if you DFA him, somebody's going to take him. There is a spot for Ryan McKenna on more than half of the major league teams out there right now. But Luke, how is Ryan McKenna still on this team?
Well, you guys already mentioned it. They really like him, and they love the makeup, and they think that he can cover for them at 3 outfield spots. And as you mentioned, he does, if you look back at his minor league numbers and if you look back at his 2022 season, there is somewhat of a track record hitting against left-handed pitching. So that's what they're trying to develop him into, and that's what they're trying to speak into existence, so to speak. And if you look at it that way, like what they see out of him and what they want him to be, I should say, is like there is a need on the roster for that kind of player. But as you mentioned, Paul, he wasn't that player last year, and he was given opportunities to be that player. And I want to say that it's a tough gig, but it's a sort of it's a weird gig where when you are the short side of a platoon, or you're not even in the short side of a platoon, you're playing maybe once a week, and it's against left-hand pitching. It doesn't take very much of a slump, so to speak, to just be like your numbers to be completely in the tank. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And like if your task is to play once a week and to hit the left-handed starter in the 2 or 3 at bats you get, you've got to do a lot with those 2 or 3 at bats. And so I wouldn't say that it's necessarily an easy gig that he was tasked with last year, but regardless, it wasn't one that he necessarily excelled at. So, but you could sort of see what they see in him in terms of what they want him to be. And it seems like they're still trying to develop him into that. And I'll leave it up to you guys whether it's worth continuing that experiment or not. I have a pretty good idea of where Paul stands on this.
Yeah.
I'm kind of with Paul here. You're right that they have a clear idea of what they want him to be and think that he can be. He has proven that he is not that guy. And I'm curious, and maybe this is just, I don't know. I'm curious if he doesn't hit that walk-off homer against the Mariners last year. I wonder if we're even talking about it.
I had a very up-close view of that. I was like 5 rows behind home plate when he hit that home run. I hate that my first thought wasn't, oh my God, we just won the game. My first thought was, oh my God, Ryan McKenna just earned another month on this roster. But continue.
I was at that game with Megan, and as soon as he came up, because he replaced Anthony Santander, who I believe had 4 hits in that game and 2 home runs. And I turned to Megan when McKenna came up. I was like, he's going to do something here, and he's going to stay on this roster. And I'm not sure I'm even going to be excited about the win just because of that. And to be fair, I was very excited about the win. I'm always excited when the Orioles win. I'm a big Mike Elias guy, typically. Mike Elias cited the onslaught of left-handed pitching that the Orioles are going to face at the beginning of the year as a reason why Kyle Stowers was optioned to AAA.
Doesn't make sense.
What? How many times he comes up, right, and he's the short side of a platoon. He's only starting occasionally against right-handed pitching. Didn't even get a chance. He would be pinch hit for in the 4th inning if a left-handed pitcher was on the mound. He finally gets a chance to face a lefty in Matt Strahm at Fenway Park, and he hits a home run into the bullpen. And then this spring, he hits 4 homers off of lefties. And we're thinking, all right, well, he's 1 for 17 against right-handed pitching with I think it was 8 strikeouts at that time. And then he comes out against the Tigers and has a 3-homer game all against right-handed pitching. So what more does this guy have to do to get the nod? Now, I understand that Kyle Stowers is a guy you want playing pretty regularly. And if he's on this big league roster, he's going to be your 5th outfielder. And that is not, a position you want him in for the sake of his development. So I kind of get it, but to disguise it as, oh, we're going to be facing a bunch of left-handed pitching, we're not going to have a use for Kyle Stowers until, that kind of subsides a little bit. Well, Stowers is the guy you want in there against left-handed pitching. It's certainly not Ryan McKenna. So look, I'm tired of talking down on McKenna. I'm sure he's a great guy. I just don't like him as a baseball player, and I can't for the life of me figure out why he's had as long a leash as the Orioles have continued to give him.
Well,
but look, with all that said, and this will be my last thought on the thing, because I saw some people talking on social media about it. Please, Orioles fans, I implore you, do not boo anybody running down the orange carpet on opening day.
Absolutely not.
Please don't do it. I don't care how you feel about the guys. I don't want him on the team, but I'm going to be cheering for Ryan McKenna just as I'm going to be cheering for everybody else.
I might not stand there and clap when he runs down the orange carpet, but I'm certainly not going to boo him. And I never once booed Chris Davis. I was there on opening day in 2019 when a lot of people booed him, but a lot of people cheered him. I was there last year when Chris Davis was announced on the field during the Adam Jones retirement ceremony. And he got, I'm not joking when I say he got the loudest ovation of anybody that was out there, louder than Markakis. He got the loudest ovation of anybody. So I believe
that was really awesome.
It was awesome because Chris Davis should be in the Orioles Hall of Fame one day. But to me, it shows that most Baltimore fans are smart and most Baltimore fans get it. You know what I mean? And like I mentioned earlier about the people on Twitter, that we can be kind of drowned out by the by the loud minority. Go ahead.
Baltimore baseball fans get it. You said Baltimore fans are smart. Baltimore fans get it. Baltimore Orioles fans. I want to be
Baltimore
clear.
Baseball fans. Baltimore. Thank you. That needs to be stated. Baltimore baseball fans, I think that they get it. And I don't think you're going to hear many, if any, people booing Ryan McKenna running down. There's going to be a few, but you're not going to hear many people booing Ryan McKenna. You're certainly not going to hear me do it. Just for me, the when you have a Ferrari, you got to take it out of the garage comment that he made a couple of years ago. And then to have the arrogance to come out in spring training and go 5 for 36 and then say that you're not worried about results because you're working on things when you're a fringe roster player as it is, to me was that there's a lot of arrogance in that, which leads me to believe that he was told from the beginning, you're going to be on this team. We're not going to not have you on this team. If he thinks it was okay for him to go out and work on things instead of actually try to make a ball club. Brandon Hyde tends to love the players that I do not love, like Rougned Odor and Adam Frazier and Ryan McKenna. He tends to love these guys because he likes gritty ball players. He likes ball players that have that drive. And you can certainly see in those three guys that I just named that they want to go out there and do whatever they can to help the ball club. And there's something to be said for that. But when your ability to help the ball club is severely limited, I'd like to believe that Ryan McKenna is not going to make it through the whole season on this roster. I think there are better players, but to the point with Kyle Stowers and Heston Kjerstad and Jackson Holiday, it's up to them to earn their way here, right? Kjerstad had a job laid out in front of him, and he had the worst spring aside from Ryan McKenna, of any outfielder on the roster. Heston Kjerstad can earn his way to Baltimore. Kyle Stowers can earn his way to Baltimore. Jackson Holiday just needs to not step in a pothole to earn his way to Baltimore. So it's up to these guys to get here. Ryan McKenna is here because he's a right-handed hitter that can play all three outfield spots, despite catching fly balls next to his ear instead of above his head. That's the last thing I'm going to say about it. I want to remind you guys that on opening day, after the baseball game is over, you can join Glenn Clark and Griffin Bass again this Thursday night for the round of 16 games in that basketball tournament thingy that we're really not allowed to say the name of in a commercial. The GCR crew will be at Sports and Social Inside Live Casino and Hotel watching and helping you bet the games. Plus, they'll have great giveaways, including live swag, baseball tickets, gift cards, and more. There's no better place to watch the games, just steps away from the FanDuel Sportsbook. So hang out with Glenn and Griffin at noon this Thursday night. Guys, missing this would be madness. All right, today's game, Orioles, they're heading to Fort Myers to take on the Twins in their final tune-up before things get real. Grayson Rodriguez takes the bump. Luke, 7 walks, 14 hits, and 11 2/3 innings pitched this spring. What are you looking for out of Grayson today?
Well, maybe pitch into the 4th or 5th inning as a tune-up for his Saturday start. Pound the zone with a fastball and let his other stuff play off of that. And that's pretty much it. Get your work in, stay healthy, pound the zone with the fastball, and let's get ready to roll next Saturday.
Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'd love to see him go out and shove, but Luke, I think you nailed it. Get right, make sure you're feeling good going into the season, stay healthy. That's really what it's all about. I mean, we've talked about how much an injury would hurt this rotation at this point. So yeah, we talked about it with Corbin Burnes last week. As spring winds down and they're getting into season shape, they kind of stop just working on things and start trying to figure out how to dominate. Grayson Rodriguez is a guy that we want to see go out and dominate. See at least a few strong innings out of him today.
Absolutely. Orioles lineup today, fairly representative for the last lineup where they have to travel to Fort Myers, which isn't exactly close to Sarasota. In center field, Cedric Mullins leading off. Batting second is shortstop Gunnar Henderson. Batting third in right field, Anthony Santander. Batting fourth at first base, Ryan Mountcastle. Batting fifth and DHing is Ryan O'Hearn. Batting sixth in left field, Austin Hayes. Batting seventh at catcher, Ryan McCann as Adley Rutschman. Did I say Ryan McCann? Is it?
I think
James McCann.
There's
James McCann.
Too many Ryans on this team.
Yeah, no. Well, and Ryan McCann was that big time catcher for the Braves and then the Astros. At catcher, batting seventh, James McCann. Adley Rutschman getting the day off in the final spring game for the Orioles. Batting eighth, playing third base, Ramon Urias, and batting ninth, playing second base, Jordan Westberg. This could be close to the lineup that we see on opening day for the Orioles. James McCann certainly not going to play. I don't think Ryan O'Hearn's going to DH against a lefty on opening day, but I think the rest of these guys are going to have an opportunity to play on opening day. Your thoughts on today's lineup and what we could see for the opening day lineup for the Orioles on Thursday?
Well, I think they're going to face a left-handed starter, right?
All 3 games.
All 3 games. So I think you might see Austin Hayes lead off, assuming that his shoulder's okay, which we have no reason to think that it's not. Then maybe you have Adley Rutschman hitting second, and then Santander third, Mountcastle fourth, Henderson fifth, Westberg at third, playing third, hitting sixth, and then maybe Mullins in center, hitting seventh, and then Mateo at second, hitting eighth, and hitting ninth, maybe your boy McKenna. Ha.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain we're going to see McKenna start 2 of these 3 games in this series. Colton Cowser hit 625 with an over 2,000 OPS against lefties this spring. Any chance that you can see him getting a start in either right field or a DH?
Or maybe you could have Urias at third. You could have Mateo at second, and then Westberg at second, and then you could throw Mateo in the outfield. That's another possibility.
Perhaps. Ryan, what do you think about opening day?
I'd rather Mateo in the outfield if you're going to throw a righty out there instead of McKenna, personally. But yeah, I think Luke pretty much nailed it. I think we see Mullins hit lower in the order. I could absolutely see Austin Hayes hitting leadoff against left-handed pitching. Ramon Urias is an interesting case because he is a reverse splits guy himself. He hits righties better than he hits lefties. But I mean, we've seen how Brandon Hyde treats platoon players. I don't think Cowser is going to get more than 1 start in that series, despite the fact that he hit lefties really well in the spring. But I think overall, Luke pretty much nailed that opening day projection.
Yeah, it didn't occur to me to bat Hayes leadoff, but I can see it now that you mention it. Gunnar Henderson hitting 5th. I like it. Rutschman's going to hit second. We know that. You know that Santander and Mountcastle are going to be hitting in the middle of your order. Mateo's going to be in that lineup whether he's playing second base or the outfield because of what he does against lefties. And that's in that game, too, in the division series. He went 4 for 4 facing left-handed pitching that day. So you're going to see Mateo in that opening day lineup. And I think I know for a fact we're going to see Ryan McKenna play 2 of those 3 games.
And I will say that by the middle of the game, you could very well see Colton Cowser and Ryan O'Hearn in the game.
Yeah, I think you absolutely could. I'll tell you that my lineup's going to start on opening day with some Royal Farms chicken, baby. Rofo chicken is cheaper by the dozen. Right now, get a 12-piece mix for just $20. Plus, you can get 2 hot, good-to-go sandwiches for just $6. And a family order of Western fries is just $5. Stop by your neighborhood Royal Farms today for these and other great offers. Gentlemen, we have reached the predictions moment of the show. We're going to look at the American League East here first. The way I think I want to do it today is we don't need to go through every division. Why don't we give our predictions for the American League East, then our predictions for the playoff teams, and our predictions for the World Series? Does that sound like a plan to you guys?
Okay.
All right. I'll start. I'll go with my AL East predictions. I have the Orioles winning the division. I think they're the best team in the American League. I think if they get John Means and Kyle Bradish back and they pitch effectively, that this team is going to be really, really hard to beat. You look at the way the Orioles season starts out. They face seven of their first 9 series are against teams that are sub 500. Those other 2 teams that were above 500 last year, God bless you, Luke. Corbin Burnes, who is no longer with the Brewers. He's with the Orioles. The Brewers are one of those teams. The other team is the Twins. Twins lost their ace in Sonny Gray. The Brewers lost their ace in Corbin Burnes. Brendan Woodruff isn't going to pitch much this season, if at all. And Devin Williams is on the IL for at least 3 months. I think the Brewers have a huge fall off. I think that the Orioles have an opportunity in their first 28 games to cover the start of the season. I think the 20-8 is a really realistic start for this ball club, considering the competition that they're facing. And if they get off and running like that, the Orioles are going to be hard to catch for any team in the American League. Coming up in second place, I think the Blue Jays. I think they have good pitching. I like their offense, despite the struggles last year. They were kind of middle of the road, but I think that they're the second best team in this division. A lot of teams, a lot of people have the Yankees being World Series favorites in the American League this year. Garrett Cole's not going to pitch for at least 2 months, in my opinion. Carlos Rodon has looked absolutely awful. You talk about Corbin Burnes and his spring training struggles. Carlos Rodon was awful this spring, and that's a guy who needed to show something because they gave him a lot of money last year to make 7 starts and be terrible in those starts. They have 2 hitters that you have confidence in Juan Soto and Aaron Judge. And I think that the Yankees are more likely to trade Soto at the deadline than they are to make a significant splash in this division this year. I got them coming in third. I think the Red Sox are sneaky good. I think Tyler O'Neill's a good pickup for them. I think that if he can stay healthy and get back to what he was a couple of seasons ago, that's a big win for the Red Sox. Their rotation's not great, but it's not terrible either. Trevor Story, I think, could have a nice bounce back here. I think that the Red Sox could make some noise. I don't think that they're a playoff team, but I think they could definitely make some noise in this division. And then the Rays, I don't know. Every year I count this team out, and then every year, like last year when they started 13-0 and were in first place into July, every year that I count them out, they somehow win 95 games. I just really don't know how you do that this year. I think that they're counting on. I mean, you're not getting Jeffrey Springs, Drew Rasmussen, or Shane McClanahan back until towards the end of the year, if at all. Shane Baz, you might get him back in the first half of the season, but he's got to prove that he can make it back. You know, their rotation, aside from Zach Eflin, they've got some guys in there, and they're really great at developing pitching. But I just don't see how they're going to be the same Tampa Bay Rays team. The big albatross around this team is what's going on with Wander Franco. I don't know that he's ever going to play Major League Baseball again. I think his career is over. The one time they pay somebody, and this is what happens. They lost Yandy Diaz. They lost Margot. I think that this team they're not going to be terrible, but I just don't see how they're the force that they've been the last several years in this American League East. Luke, what you got?
Well, I'm a little higher on the Yankees than you are. I just have a hard time believing that an offense with Aaron Judge and Juan Soto isn't going to score a bunch of runs. And I understand that Anthony Rizzo had the concussion issues last year, but apparently he's fine now. And I understand that DJ LeMahieu is banged up again, and that's sort of been a recurring theme. But I also like some of the other additions that they made. Grisham, I thought, was a really nice get, almost like a throw-in in that Soto deal. And I think Verdugo is going to be a nice fit in the outfield for the Yankees. And then Gleyber Torres is in a contract year. I expect that he'll have a really nice year. I know they're excited about Anthony Volpe taking a step forward this year. I think the Yankees are going to score a lot of runs. And so I'm a little more confident in their lineup than you are. They always seem to have a top 5 bullpen. That's something that they do as well as anybody in the sport, is to develop relievers. And I have no reason to think that won't still be the case. They have a really talented bullpen. Their rotation is a concern without Garrett Cole and not knowing what you're going to get out of Carlos Rodon. Yesterday, he was like 91, 92. And so I don't know if Giants Rodon, who's throwing up to 98, I don't know if that guy's coming back.
And Nestor Cortez is their opening day starter.
Right. Right. Who has given the Orioles some fits over the years, by the way. But last year really turned into a 2 times through the order guy for the Yankees. So I'm a little higher on the Yankees than you are. The Jays have one of the best rotations in baseball, assuming that Gausman is okay. I think I just read that he's going to throw 3 innings today as part of his ramp up to get back going again. So assuming that he's okay, it's hard not to love their rotation, especially those first 4 with Kikuchi, Gausman, help me out, Bassett, and
Barrios.
I mean, that's as good a top 4 as you're going to find in the sport. There's no doubt about that. So as far as an order, Ryan, what do you think? I'm not sure.
I agree with
the only thing I will say is that I didn't love Paul's order. I don't know. I don't love Paul's order. I haven't settled on an order myself, though.
Well, so all right, you guys have definitely gotten into the meat and potatoes of each team. So I'll just kind of give my order and I guess a brief overview. I do think the Orioles win the division. The Jays and Yankees are kind of a flip flop for me. We've been talking for a long time about the Jays taking that step. They have had a lot of young talent on that team for several years now, but haven't really broken through. I do think that. I'm going to agree with Paul. I'm going to put the Jays in second, the Yankees in third, only because I'm not sure with this Yankees team. You know, we've talked at length about their rotation issues. I think they're going to struggle a lot. I do think they'll score some runs, but I think that, you know, they've gone through stretches, and it's largely the same team with the additions of, you know, Verdugo and Trent Grisham. And of course, Juan Soto is a huge factor, but they went through stretches last year where they just could not score runs outside of Aaron Judge. And I'm not sure that they're going to get consistent contributions from the entirety of their lineup for the duration of the season. I will say I think Anthony Rizzo takes a big step this year. He dealt with, you know, those post-concussion symptoms last year and was not himself. He hit very well this spring. So I do think the Yankees offense is going to be a lot better than it was. But I will, because of their starting rotation, I'll put the Jays in second, Yankees in third. Paul had the Red Sox in fourth, the Rays in last. I would flip-flop those as well. The Rays just always find a way. And the Red Sox, you know, outside of Tyler O'Neill, their big offseason addition was Lucas Giolito, who is now injured. I don't see the Red Sox taking a big step forward this year. So I would put Tampa in fourth and the Red Sox in fifth.
So I think I might like that. So that would be Orioles, Yankees, Jays, Rays, Sox.
He said
I got Jays ahead of the Yankees.
Okay.
So I've got Paul's order: Orioles, Jays, Yankees, but then Rays and Sox.
So I'll go Orioles, Yankees, Jays, Rays, Sox. And I will say that those top four teams I expect will be pretty tightly compacted. So like I expect the Rays to figure it out as they always do. And the other thing is that playing at the Trop sucks. They will have a good home record. They will have a good home record to fall back on. So
I feel like people are Anthony Rizzo's not good, guys. Like, let's talk about this for a second. Anthony Rizzo's a Gold Glove first baseman. Like, I get that. But Anthony Rizzo hasn't been Anthony Rizzo since 2019. He's a 230 hitter. Anthony Rizzo is a 230 hitter.
I mean, if you look at his production in New York outside of when he just take away when he got hit by at first base by Fernando Tatis.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, he's been a pretty productive player in New York. And so
I've got his numbers in front of me. He's been not good.
Hold on. Let's see.
I'm prepared to dispute this too. I feel like he's been better than you're giving him credit for. I know the batting average hasn't been.
He had a 32 homer season.
I don't care about his batting average.
He's a 235 hitter with the Yankees, but he's 334 on base. Is not great, but it's solid. 768 OPS isn't quite. I mean, my benchmark typically is 800. 768 isn't too far below that. I mean, his 2022 was 32 home runs in 22.
Yeah, so 2022 he was healthy. So
we watched him hit 3 pop-ups in 2022 that would have been outs in every. He did it against the Orioles. 3 pop-ups would have been outs in every single stadium, but were home runs at Yankee Stadium. Look, you can't take that away from him because it's a home field advantage. I get that.
Yeah, you got to play to that.
I feel like we are just overvaluing. Not to interrupt you, Luke. I'm sorry about that. I feel like we are 100% overvaluing who Anthony Rizzo is at this point in his career.
I mean, that's very possible. I mean, he is a career 125 OPS plus guy. And in 22, when he was healthy, he had 130 OPS plus. Mm-hmm. Last year, he was not healthy. And obviously, his production took quite a hit. But yeah, I mean, he's also, he is 34 years old, turned 35 in August. So yeah, I mean, it's possible that last year's production wasn't so much as much injury related as we would like to think, and that it's just an older guy getting older. So yeah, I mean, that's very possible. And yeah, I'm not trying to argue that this is still like peak Chicago Rizzo, but I think that he's got a chance to be like a real productive hitter again, the same way he was in 22 when he had 130 OPS plus. So
and there is something to be said for the fact that he's got protection from Soto and Judge. So I'll give you that, and yeah,
he's gonna hit with a lot of guys on base this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I get that. I just how many guys are you going to have in your lineup that won't hit much better than 240? Anthony Volpe, he could take that step forward, but he hit like 200 last year. Rizzo is a 230 hitter as a Yankee. DJ LeMahieu, you signed him to be a 320 hitter, and he's at best now a 260 hitter. And I know that you guys don't care about batting average. Batting average isn't the be all end all, but those are guys that you can get out at this point in their career. I just, and look, Verdugo is a nice pickup. He's a guy who can hit. He's a guy who's going to hit a lot more home runs than he normally would because he's playing in Yankee Stadium. He's going to play some solid defense for you out there in right field. Verdugo's a nice pickup for that team. And I think the Yankees are going to be good. I think they're going to be good, but I don't think that they're going to be. I don't think they're the World Series contender that a lot of pundits pick them to be.
And the last thing on Rizzo, and I didn't plan on being the Anthony Rizzo defender today, but I guess that's where life is.
Okay.
Someone has to be.
Before the Padres series last year, when he got concussed, he was hitting 301, 376, 513. So, and now would that have continued the entire year? Probably not. But I do. I mean, he was playing hurt for a long time last year. So, yeah, I don't know how much stock I put in his numbers last year, which, as you mentioned, Paul, were not good.
Yeah, he did get off to a hot start last year. I remember that very well. He got off to a blazing start last year, and then he got hurt. I'll give you that.
You can kind of equate it to Ryan Mountcastle playing through vertigo. It's not an easy thing to do when your head is foggy, and he was dealing with concussion symptoms for the majority of the season. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that Rizzo is still or is going to be a top 5 first baseman. I'm not sure he'll even be top 10, but I don't think he's going to be that hole in the lineup that Paul, you're making him out to be. He's
I don't think he's a hole in the lineup.
Right.
I don't think he's a hole in the lineup. I don't think he's noteworthy.
I suppose that's fair. I feel like he's really looked like himself this spring. The results have been there for him. He's looked more like Cubs Rizzo than he has Yankees Rizzo this spring. And I think that, there's a shot hitting behind Soto and Judge in that lineup. I think there's a chance that carries over.
I just, my basic thought on the Yankees is that a lineup with Aaron Judge, even if Judge plays like 130 games instead of 155, a lineup with Judge and Soto, I just have a hard time believing that's not going to be one of the most productive lineups in baseball.
Oh, sure.
Soto is like a 6 or 7 win improvement over what they were running out in one of the corners last year, at any one time. So, we talk about like what the Corbin Burnes acquisition could mean for the Orioles this year in a single season. I think that Soto could mean just as much, if not more, to the Yankees from a position player standpoint. I mean, they have 2 of the 5 best hitters in baseball in Judge and Soto. So,
absolutely. And look, Soto got off to a slow start last year. I don't expect that to happen this year. Aaron Judge has played more than 130 games in the season 3 times in 8 big league seasons. So I don't know that you can pencil him in to play that many games. I mean, he's a big guy, a big-bodied guy. Those guys get hurt.
He's going to be playing a lot of center field this year.
And yes,
which I don't know if I totally understand.
I don't love it.
Who's I think he's already like 32 years old. As you mentioned, big-bodied guy, has been banged up a lot. I would probably, but then you could say, he got hurt in right field last year. So, but generally speaking, you're probably a little easier on your body playing a corner. But again, Aaron Judge would dispute that given what happened last year.
Aaron Judge is a freak of nature. He's one of the best hitters in baseball.
I'm not saying like when he's in center field, he's fine out there, which is amazing. I mean, he's like an average center fielder out there. I mean, which again is really amazing given his size. But.
Yeah, like I have all the confidence in the world in Aaron Judge when he's on the field. It's just how often is he going to be on the field? The 2 seasons he played full seasons, he had 52 homers as a rookie and 62 homers to win MVP in 2022. When he's on the field day in and day out, I mean, 106 games last year, he hit 37 home runs. The guy's a freak. He's got to prove that he can stay on the field. We got to move on here. Playoff teams in the American League, gentlemen. What do you got?
Ooh. Ryan, you go first.
I have no idea. I think everyone in the AL Central is bad, and everybody in the AL West is good. And that's sort of an exaggeration, but I think the winner of the Central is going to have about 86, 87 wins. I am inclined to think it's going to be the Guardians, but I think the Twins have a shot as well. I don't think the Royals and the Tigers are going to be as bad as people make them out to be. I see a lot of young talent on those teams and a lot of guys who fly under the radar. Now, they're not going to win 80 games, but they might push 70. I could see it. Maybe I'm being a little optimistic. And then in the West, it's going to be a 3-horse race between the Mariners, the Rangers, and the Astros. And for me, at this point, it's a coin flip to see who's going to come out on top. It came down to the wire last year. Give me the Mariners.
Okay. Well, wow. I was talking about the Toronto rotation before, saying that they've got one of the best rotations in baseball. Well, Seattle might have the best rotation in baseball. Their rotation is outstanding. The one area of concern that I would have is that a couple of those key relievers last year, Brash and Munoz, were used quite heavily. And I wonder how they hold up this year after their workload last year, where they were among the tops in appearances last year and were, again, worked very heavily. So I'm a little concerned about that. AL Central, I guess I'm defaulting to the Twins, but could Detroit take a step forward this year? Yes. Could Kansas City take a step forward? Yes. Do you really love any of these teams?
No,
I don't. There's not one team that really grabs me as like intriguing, and as a team that you really want to watch. And there's a player I want to watch. I want to watch Bobby Witt. That's a player I want to watch. So yeah, I guess I would default to the Twins in that division. In the West, you mentioned the Mariners. As much as I love that rotation, and they did do a lot to sort of reshape their lineup. It's
a tough one.
You might be sort of selling me on Seattle. I didn't expect that. Huh. I'm not sure.
He kind of sold me.
It wasn't my intention, but
so my playoff teams. I think you're only getting 2 teams out of the East this year. Okay. I think it's gonna be the Orioles and the Blue Jays. I got Cleveland winning the Central, and then you're getting the Mariners, Rangers, and Astros coming out of the West. In what order, I don't know. I think I have to give it to the Astros because they're the Astros, and that
bullpen now is crazy with Hader and Presley on the back end. It's pretty damn good.
Yeah. If they can get the solid starting pitching, I know that the Rangers just won the World Series, but then they didn't do anything to address their starting rotation this offseason.
Well, they're hoping that midseason they will get Tyler Mahle back, that they'll get Max Scherzer back, and then they'll get Jacob deGrom back. So it seems like they're going to have a first half rotation. They're going to have a second half rotation.
Yeah, which could be the same thing with the Orioles.
Could be. And then you mentioned the Astros. How many innings do they get out of Verlander this year? How many do you think they're hoping for? Maybe 140, maybe?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, there. If you get 140 high-level innings out of Verlander with a healthy Verlander for the postseason, they'll probably take that. But yeah, I kind of agree with you with all 3 of those teams making it, 1 out of the Central. And for me, I guess that I would default to Minnesota, and then I'll go with the Orioles and the Yankees in the East.
All right. National League.
I will say that.
Go ahead, Ryan. I was
going to say that top wild card team is going to have a good matchup taking on the winner of the AL Central. That's for sure.
Yeah. Hey, maybe the Orioles will come in second place. Like maybe they'll win 104 and the Blue Jays will win 105, and then they can come in second place.
I honestly, we've lost our last, I think, 8 playoff games. I wouldn't mind getting a couple easy wins there against someone from the Central. I shouldn't say easy wins, but you know what I mean.
Have they lost? Yeah, you're right. No, they've lost 7. No, you're right. They're the last 8. That's crazy. Thanks
3
for that,
against
Ryan.
Texas, 1 in Toronto, and 4 in Kansas City.
Oh God. All right. National League. I'm going to say that in the East that you're going to get the Braves and the Phillies coming out of the East, and I think the Braves have one of the best rosters in all of baseball. I think they're going to win that division.
Yep.
The Braves, Phillies coming out of the East. I got to go back to them. I'm going to take the Cardinals in the Central. I know they added a bunch of like 87-year-olds to their rotation this offseason, but I think that they're all solid pitchers. So I'm gonna go with the Cardinals coming out of the Central. I think the Cubs and the Reds could make a nice run, but the Brewers aren't going to sniff the playoffs this year. I don't think. I think that they're dealing with too much. But the Cardinals will win that division, and then I think you're getting 3 teams out of the West out there. Also, it's going to be the Dodgers. The Giants have done a lot. They've had a sneaky good offseason.
And they got a lot of good prices too.
Yeah. And then the Padres. The Padres have too much talent. Like they went something like 8-23 in one-run games last year, and that cost them the playoffs.
Right.
They have too much talent to not bounce back this year. So I'll take 3 in the West, 1 in the Central, 2 in the East, just like the American League.
So remember that Orioles Padres series last year? It was in San Diego. It was in August, and you're watching the series like, how is this Padres team not better? Like they've got some studs in their lineup. And that series, they trotted out Darvish, Snell, and Waka. Mm-hmm. And you're thinking to yourself, of course, the Orioles missed their number 4 and 5 starters, who were at that point were like Rich Hill and some other guy. But you're watching that series thinking, like, how is this team not better? But you mentioned they went, had the crazy bad record of 1-run games, and it took them a while to even win an extra inning game. Mm-hmm. So now they've got, I guess Manny is only DHing at this point because he had an elbow procedure during the offseason, and he's sort of easing his way back into it. And they have Tyler Wade at third base at this point. And so I don't know how long that's going to go on for. But, you were talking about some predictions. How about Fernando Tatis Jr. as a sneaky NL MVP candidate?
Yeah.
I think that he could have a monster season. So I would not be surprised at all, especially after the C steal, if San Diego is right back in the thick of things. And as you mentioned, unfortunate for Arizona with Eduardo Rodriguez having a lat strain before opening day. I thought that was going to be a big key for them to have Eduardo be able to give them 160 to 180 really good innings from the left side to go with Zach Gallen at the top of the rotation and Merrill Kelly. So that's unfortunate. Hopefully he gets back by like May 1st, hopefully. But there should be a lot of really, really good series throughout the season with these 4 teams, I would think. Colorado is probably going to be a punching bag, and I'm not really sure what the direction they're trying to go with that franchise is. But yeah, I mean, just sort of directionless in the Mountain High. So, yeah, I could see all 4 of those teams that we mentioned being playoff teams. But I will say LA, San Francisco, San Diego as playoff teams. 1 team in the Central being, I really like the Cubs.
Yeah, they got a good team. I just think the Cardinals, I got to go with them.
They brought back Bellinger. And really, they should have made the playoffs last year. And they collapsed down the stretch. And they lost, I think it was like 5 of 6 games to Arizona in September. And that's what cost them a chance to go to the playoffs. And that's why Arizona snuck in. Because remember, Arizona was like nosediving in the second half.
Yeah.
But they were able to win 5 of 6 against Chicago, which got them in. And then exactly what you said in the East, Atlanta and Philadelphia. I think Atlanta has the best roster in baseball.
You got to look at Arizona last year. They backed into the playoffs and then they got hot and made it to the World Series. But they were like an 83 win team last year, 83, 84 wins. And I remember seeing them in like June or July. They were like 10 games above 500. And then when I looked at I randomly looked at the standings in like August, like late August, and they were 8 games under 500. And then you look up again at the end of September, and somehow they're in the thick of the playoff race, backing into it. Arizona, I think they've got a good young team, and I think that they're up and coming. Despite, it's weird to say that about a team that just played in the World Series, but are they better than? They have no impact on what happens in the in the NL Central. Are they better than either the Braves or the Phillies, whichever team is going to be in second place in that division? And are they better than the three teams that Luke and I put ahead of them in the West? I just don't think that they are. I think that they're a good team that's going to get better this year, but I think getting better this year still makes them on the outside looking into the playoffs. Ryan, what you got?
I think that's fair. I'm going to go bold here, and the Dodgers are going to win the division. I'm going to go bold and say that all three NL wildcard teams come from the West. I'm going to say the Giants, Padres, and Diamondbacks all sneak their way in. I like the Phillies, but I like to be bold. What can I say?
That's fine.
So I'm going to give the Braves out of the East for sure. I agree with Luke that they have maybe the Dodgers ahead, but the Braves are in the league. And then I'm gonna take the Cubs out of the Central as well. I think the Cardinals are dealing with a lot of internal turmoil. Wow, that's a tongue twister. I think the Reds are dealing with too many injuries in the Noelvi Marte suspension. I know the Cardinals did a lot of work to improve their rotation this year, brought in a lot of veteran guys, but I like the Cubs a lot to take the Central. But yeah, give me 4 NL West teams in the playoffs.
All right. And then finally, and let's try to do this part a little bit more quickly. World Series predictions. I'll let you guys go first. I'll pull up the rear on this one.
Ooh.
Braves over the Orioles in 6.
All right.
Ozzie Albies MVP.
Wow. Okay.
Let's have some fun. Orioles over Phillies in 5. Gunnar Henderson MVP.
I think Gunnar Henderson.
1983, baby, bring it back.
I think Gunnar Henderson's going to be a top 3 MVP candidate just overall this year. God, he is so damn good. He's going to be something else this year.
Yeah, I mean, from Memorial Day on last year, he was one of the best players in baseball.
Yeah, and just coming back off that oblique strain in spring training, and all he's done is hit 412 this spring. He's a freak. I'm going to go with Ryan. Braves over Orioles in 6 in the World Series. You know, and you could look at the Dodgers and you can make a case for them. Shohei Ohtani's going to get away with this gambling thing because they want him to. I think where there's smoke, there's fire. But and there's some weird stuff going on out in LA with this whole gambling thing, and we certainly haven't heard the last of this. But Shohei Ohtani is arguably the face of baseball. Nothing's going to happen to him. Nothing's going to happen to him. But the Dodgers rotation isn't there. They've got 2 good guys at the top, assuming Yamamoto is actually better than what he showed in spring training and what he showed in Game 2. I think the Braves have the best roster in baseball. I just do. And I think that they're going to go. I think they're angry. They're going to make it back to the World Series, and the Orioles' time's coming. I think they'll be in the World Series this year. I just don't think that they're going to win it this year. Maybe next year. With that said, I want to remind you again that if you're craving that classic New York deli experience, you can look no further than the Atman's Deli in Baltimore's Harbor Point. Corned beef piled high, hand-rolled bagels, and something different, a bar. Atman's Harbor Point. Go to atmansdeli.com for daily specials. And Luke, we like to end the show these days interacting with some of our listeners. We've got a lot of comments again. Thank you everybody for engaging with us today. We're gonna go with Randall. I didn't mean to click that, but since it popped up, I'm sorry. You know what? Skip that because it's in response to somebody else. Let me go up here. Wow,
I was gonna say we're going in reverse order this time.
Yeah, my bad. I accidentally hit that. Don C. Good Sunday morning, Luke, Ryan, Paul. 4 days before the opener. Let's go O's. Let's go O's indeed. Also from Don C. I get the Jackson Holiday option to start in AAA. They send him down fine. Did Jackson not do enough with the walk to strike out? I'm confused. And Mayo hit his way on, and that's why he's still up. Mayo's been reassigned. He's still playing because you're reassigned doesn't mean you can't be in spring lineups. I think it's the strike to walkout ratio, but more than anything, he hit 200 against left-handed pitching when we're talking about Jackson Holliday, and they want him to play a little bit more second base.
Right. And I would also say that I don't know if it really mattered what he did statistically in spring, that it seems like maybe he was only a real option for opening day if somebody got hurt, and nobody got hurt. So, and short of that this was always their development plan for him. That's what it seems to me.
Right.
Yeah, I think if he had a real shot to make the team based on his performance, then he would have made the team based on his performance. I think it's as simple as that.
I think cooler heads are beginning to prevail with this whole thing. I think that the ire here is the fact that Mike Elias said he's got a strong possibility, and then he had a good spring, and then still didn't make the roster. If he had come out at the winter meetings and said, Jackson Holliday's got an opportunity, but there's a lot of guys who have played well that are already here that he's going to have to leapfrog. So he's going to get some run, but it's nothing's guaranteed. I think we would have all reacted a little bit differently if that were the case.
And I also think if Mateo and Arias hadn't hit as well as they did in the spring, then
that's true too.
If either one of them had really faltered OPS around 550, 600, then we'd be a little more furious about this whole situation.
Sure. Also, Don C. I love Mayo and wanted them both to make the team, but man, what are they doing? Is it showcasing Nevin, Norby, Arias for early trades? Don't get it. Still excited. So many great problems to have. Nevin, Norby, Arias. Norby, he's got to have defensive versatility. With the bat, I think they think his bat's major league ready, and I think that they don't want to have to put him in AAA. But he's a second baseman. I wouldn't be surprised to see him play a lot of corner outfield.
I think you're absolutely right. I think he's going to play a lot of left field. That would be my guess. And this is speculation, but looking toward the trade deadline, he might be one of the big chips that other teams are looking at, because it's hard to see an easy fit for Norby right now, long term on this team. But again, that can change with one injury.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I don't have much to add there. I agree.
And with regards to Ramon Arias, this is a former Gold Glover at third base. He hasn't made an error at second base in like half a decade. Okay, and the bat's fine with Ramon Arias. He's not going to hit 280 with 30 home runs, but he's going to hit 260 with 15 to 20, and he's going to play solid defense. People just don't like Ramon Arias right now because his name's not Jackson.
Right. And I will say that teams tend to value vets who they know what they're going to get from. They know exactly what they're going to get from Mateo. They know exactly what they're going to get from Arias.
Yeah. Randall Fracase, we're gonna jump to you. Whose butt is Mateo and Arias kissing? Keeping Mateo and Arias over Holliday and Stowers was an insult. So sick of Mateo, Arias, and McKenna, the great inning killers. They aren't being kept to be everyday players, guys. Ramon Arias might get more run because he can play all three infield positions, but they're being kept as bench players. Like you're asking, you clearly want Holliday and Stowers to start, and a lot of us do too. But who are they going to start over? Because now are they going to start over Hayes? Are they going to start over Santander? Holliday, you want him to start at second base, but like Mateo and Arias and McKenna are going to be bench players. So the guys that we love, do you want them riding the pine? Because that's what we're talking about here. That's what you have to think of this as. These guys aren't blocking them from playing every day. They're blocking them from playing in bench roles.
And this team could look a lot different by late June. You could have a Mayo up. You could have Holliday up. You could have Kerstead up. And so one thing we have seen is that Mike and his crew are pretty conservative with the development of prospects in terms of wanting them to truly master each level before moving on to the next stage. And it seems like they are sticking with that path.
Yeah, there could eventually be an Arias trade or a Mateo trade, a McKenna DFA, even a Santander or Mullins or Hayes trade is certainly possible going forward. So, yeah, I mean, I think the roster that we're going to see in the playoffs will take shape as the season goes on. Holiday is not going to be down for too long. I think Stowers, we've talked about it. He certainly has an opportunity to play his way onto the roster. I personally feel like he did in the spring. But with that said, like you both have said, who's he going to start over at this point? So we'll see what happens.
And I think they want him to prove it over a larger sample in AAA after really last year was a lost year for him.
Yeah. All right. Pushing also from Randall, pushing Kramer down the slot should work to O's advantage and see Kramer to a 15-win season. Well, he won 13. Yeah, he won 13 games last year. If your number 4 starter wins 15 games, that would be freaking awesome.
Yeah, so no more Jordan Lyles, no more Kyle Gibson. So they could use like an innings eater type of guy that goes 180, 190 innings. If Kramer can be that type of guy, I think he was 170 last year. If he can take one more step up and eat even more innings, that would be huge for the Orioles.
Yeah, I don't put a lot of stock into pitcher wins, but if Kramer has a 15-win season, that means the Orioles are winning a lot of games, so I'm all for it.
Yep.
I was looking at Rick Helling's stats, and I think his best ERA in the season was like 4.17. One year he won 20 games, and he had a 4.48 ERA. I don't put a lot of stock into wins, too. It's more about your ERA and your innings pitched and your team wins. Dean Kramer, to me, one of the things about Dean, he's shown a little bit here and there. He's got that dog in him, but then there were times down the stretch where you really needed him to go out and have a good start, and he kind of laid an egg. I want to see Dean get that. Ryan and I talked about a game a couple of weeks ago that he pitched in where like he loaded the bases and he got pissed off and then just struck the next 3 guys out on like 10 pitches, all like 97-mile-an-hour fastballs up at the shoulders. So I want to see more of that out of Dean Kramer. If he can prove that he's got that in him, I think he becomes that much better of a starter for this team. Randall, I think I understand this. ALF Mateo is smart. Are you trying to say outfield outfielder Mateo is smart? He should become the best bunter in he should have become the best bunter in baseball during the offseason. With that speed, the fact that Mateo is as poor a bunter as he is quite confounding to me. With that kind of speed, you should be laying down a bunt at least once a game.
Maybe he was actually about hunting.
I think he was saying that Mateo should have been learning how to hunt in the offseason instead of practicing baseball.
Oh,
I think that's how much disdain Randall has toward Jorge Mateo based on some of his other comments.
Yeah, that's a lot of disdain.
Yeah, it is. But to your point, Paul, if he did mean bunter, then yes, we've talked about it before. If Mateo could bunt, I'd be far more inclined to keep him around as long as possible.
We got only a couple more minutes left to do all this. The ghost of Billy Martin. I got Orioles, Jays, Yankees, Rays, and Sox, and the top 3 will be within 5 games of each other. It's going to be a tight division. It really is. He's got the same order as me. Actually, the same order as Ryan. Orioles, Jays, Yankees. I think that they will be tight. But I can also see the Orioles kind of distancing themselves as we get towards the latter half of the season.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think the Orioles are going to win another 100. But I could see them winning 95 and the Jays and Yankees pushing 92, 93. So yeah, I think it's going to be a close race, but I agree that the Orioles, I think when it's all said and done, are going to have the leg up.
Yeah,
guys, we gotta we have so many more comments and we just don't have time to get to them. But PressBox has more stuff that airs at noon today, so we can't continue. I really do appreciate everybody engaging and getting these comments in to us. The preview show is always the longest one. Like we could have gone 3 hours today if we had the time to do that. So usually we're going to be able to get all these comments from the fans in, but on this particular show, just too much to cover that we just couldn't hit it all. So I do apologize if you had comments and we didn't get to them. We will next week. Guys, anything you want to leave us with before we sign off today?
I'm excited for baseball, brother.
I cannot wait, man. Most excited I think I've ever been for an Orioles.
Are you going to opening day?
The 16th year straight. Yes, sir.
Oh yeah, brother.
Yeah. What about you? Where are you sitting?
I'm not sitting. I'm sitting on my couch at the moment. So
gotcha.
Hopefully get out to a game at least once during the weekend. So
hopefully. Ryan, anything you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I will be there on Thursday as well. Very much looking forward to it. And my only real final thought is let's go Birds. I am pumped. Let's do it.
Let's go, Bows. Ready for some Orioles magic. It's going to be a fun 2024 season. Can't wait. So happy to share it with all of you. Special thanks to Luke Jackson, editor of PressBox and baseball aficionado, for joining us on the show today. Ryan, thank you as always for the great work and great job you do every week on the show. Ryan put together most of these notes for us last night, so kudos to you on that. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Without you, we don't have a show. Thank you to you, the wonderful listeners and viewers of our show. Without you, we most certainly do not have a show. Until next week, go O's. Opening day on Thursday, baby. See ya.